everyone. Welcome to our NBA preview with Jacob from Trypod. Hit us up, Jacob. Let us know what's been going on with the NBA.
Well, mate, we had the first ever in-season tournament. I think I've spoken about this each
Yes.
week, and yeah, I loved it. The Lakers saluted, LeBron led the way, but for me, the highlight was actually Indiana, just showing some of these smaller market, less fancied teams can go on a run. I thought they played inspired. They knocked off two heavyweights along the way in Boston and Milwaukee. They were bested in the final, but still, it was a pretty exciting Final Four that we had in Vegas. And we also got a win last week. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't say we got a win. I tipped the Clippers a week ago in the game we looked at, but Harden had 20, not 25 that we would have needed for a juicy payout. I'm keeping my eye on the Clippers though. They're playing a little bit better. I know people are giving me grief, but they're still my dark horse for this year.
I love it. And I think we always say with the odds comparison tool, it's probably best morning of game day Aussie time to check the tool. There's usually more bookies and more markets up. Today's a good example of that. So Jacob, I'll just very quickly share the odds comparison tool anyway. So obviously Google Wiki Linktree, the odds comparison tool that you see here. You can see for other games, there's a few other bookies that have started popping up markets, but usually morning of game day we've got 5 bookies, and all the markets are set up for the games that we're looking for. But the game we're going to talk about, Spurs and Lakers, unfortunately, there's not much on there, and Jacob's just about to explain why.
Yes, so it's the only televised game. Well, when I say televised, if you're a hooper head out there, you might have League Pass. You also can watch some of these games through some bookie apps. We're just going to cover each week the ESPN/KO game, and it's more about showing how I'm approaching it, how I'm looking for value. So the game they're showing is the in-season champion Lakers taking on the Spurs like last week. Now, the Spurs, I believe, I've lost count, honestly, but I think they've lost 16 straight games.
Jeez.
So as I explained last week, they're not nationally televised because they're any good. It's because they have Wemby. And I guess some element of we get a passing of the torch here. We get LeBron versus Wembanyama. We don't know how many more of these matchups we might get. So that's why this is the TV game. The Lakers had to win 7 in a row to claim the first in-season tournament, as I said. And then predictably, you go to Vegas, you win the one-off game. You know you're going to be flat in the next game. So predictably, they lost today. To be fair, they actually played really well. It was a quality game, just went down narrowly to the Mavs. But now they got to back up. So that's going to make it tougher again for the Lakers. I still think the odds are really fishy here because you got the team that won the in-season tournament that's got a winning record. You got the Spurs, whose record is abysmal, and yet San Antonio are only slight outsiders in this game. And that is why the odds comparison tool doesn't have a lot to show us, because clearly there's big question marks over the Lakers stars. Whether it's Davis or LeBron, it's unlikely probably that both back up. Now, the NBA has imposed some new rules on teams, especially for the nationally televised games. You can't sit multiple superstars, but I feel like it's pretty likely LeBron or AD will be out. So where I will be looking is for another Lakers starter to maybe get a greater volume of shots and therefore to hit a points milestone. Now, if you look at this particular game, what you're seeing is all of the Spurs players. There's no question marks over their availability, but you're not seeing any Lakers being posted for that very reason. So this is a classic case where you're going to want to monitor the news, but you're also going to want to check the odds comparison tool the morning of the game. And the player who I'm going to highlight conditionally, where I think he could hit this milestone even if his team was full strength, but especially if a teammate is out, I'm looking for Lakers point guard D'Angelo Russell, okay? So the play I'd be looking for tomorrow morning is D'Angelo Russell to score 20-plus points. So you can bring up 20-plus points, Nakul, as an example. We're only going to see a handful of Spurs players there for if you were to narrow it to the Spurs-Lakers game. That's the 20-plus points markets. Yeah. But tomorrow, Russell should be there, and he's just been pretty quiet the last few games, but I like the trend that people may have noticed. I like the guys who can shoot the three, but they've been a bit cold, because it's going to suppress their scoring, but it's not going to continue at that rate. Like, for example, D'Angelo Russell, 31% on threes in December, but 45% in November. So we know what he's capable of. He is a high-quality three-point shooter, and I just feel he's the type of player that if he hits one or two in the first half, he will keep firing away, especially if they're not at full strength. There's more offense required. So that's the guy I'm looking at is D'Angelo Russell. And the odds I'm expecting, because I've looked at previous games, I'm kind of expecting $5 plus. I think is a really nice price about Russell for the 20 plus. And then you again use the tool and compare if you go even more outlandish, like a 25 plus game, because he's the kind of guy who he can be quiet, but he can also go off in a big way.
Nice. And I think with the NBA, we were just discussing this on the NFL pod. With the same game multis, can you see an angle where if you do find out which Lakers player is missing, how would you, if you were looking at not a huge like a 10 legger or anything, but if you had say 2 or 3 legs in the same game multi, how could you potentially look to sort of approach that?
It's we always say there's like infinite ways, but I suppose a simplistic way of looking at it is once you know who's out, you're saying, all right, well, if they are to win, they are going to need to lean more heavily on the other play. If it's LeBron or Anthony Davis, as simple as it is, if one's out, if you're gonna play Lakers to win anyway, you're probably looking for the other to go over. So you're gonna look at where you're getting a good price on over on points, but also rebounds, and in LeBron's case, assists as well. And again, if one of the two of the role players can step up, then you might look for them to hit a milestone with a Lakers win. But if you like the upset from the Spurs, you may tie that into Laker unders, right? And the
Mm,
theory being that if one of the main production men is already out and then another is limited, then it's kind of hard to see where all their points are going to come from. So that's like a simplistic way that I'd
nice.
look at it. But again, we talked in the NFL show that we just recorded. I am looking at the implied odds of every leg that I add and how it affects the overall odds of the multi. So I'm not going to add something simplistic in like Lakers lose, as in Spurs win, and LeBron unders, if I'm getting completely ripped off on the price. But I am going to at least look at it and see what price they're going to offer, factoring in that those two events are correlated.
Yep. And I think like we did address this briefly on the NFL pod. And I think Jacob, I think I mentioned to you our Discord blew up, the wiki Discord from 300 to 3,000 sort of midway through this NRL season, right? And like I think both of us have for me it's definitely not professionally, but I've been punting for over 10 years, probably more seriously in the last couple, but and obviously you've been doing the same, right? So I think we may not a lot of the stuff that Jacob's talking about might be a little bit too much too detailed if you're new to punting or if you're only 20 or 21 or something like that. But I think if it's not making that much sense, obviously feel free to hit us up on social media and stuff. The Facebook Tripod Punters Tips Forum is obviously got over 25,000 people, and the wiki Discord's grown quite a bit as well. But I think if you're not understanding a lot of these things, it's probably a sign that you shouldn't be putting 10 leg multis on. And the simple way to do is just the simple way to do it is just if you are following whatever sport you're following, you do want to put on a bet. Obviously, gamble responsibly, etc. But if you are putting on a bet, make sure you're sort of like sticking to what you know. So if I'm watching an NBA game and I'm thinking, oh great, like LeBron's out, I'm going to bet on the guy that's going to take on more of a role because of that, and then I'll tie that in with whatever else. Try to keep it to like 2 or 3 legs if you are putting a multi on. Because I do get the other side, right? If you're 20 or 21, you're at university, you probably don't have a couple of $100 to chuck on a line bet or a total bet or whatever it is. So I fully get why you'd want to see higher odds, lower stake, have a bit more fun with your punting. But I think there's still a way around not going 5 to 10 legs where you don't know what the hell is going on halfway through the game.
Yeah, I tend to agree. You can always build up to that, but it's harder as well to see how every leg is actually affecting the odds that you're getting. So I think that's a good starting point to
Yeah.
keep it somewhat more simplistic. And as I said in the last show, I find a simpler multi actually a bit easier to follow and cheer for because I don't need 7 different things to happen for me at once.
100%. And if you're following, for example, like the BBL, the Big Bash, the cricket in Australia is on at the moment. It's a really good gauge of sort of seeing a few other tipsters pop up and seeing their angles as well. So I think there's no lack of good tipsters or good angles out there. And if you're new to a sport, it might be worth just sort of putting a super small stake on, but following a few different people, reading their write-ups to understand like their way of punting. And I think that's the best bit about what we're trying to do here is, we're not going to go as deep into NFL and NBA as we obviously would with rugby league, but it's a really nice way to get some knowledge out for the punters. And obviously, if you guys have any questions or suggestions, hit us up. We're always always happy to chat punting.
Hopefully, we're helping people, but it'll help even more if we can get back on winning ways this week as well.
No, 100%. Anyways, guys, look, Google Wiki Linktree, obviously the NBA pod we're doing right now, the NFL pod, both the odds comparison tools, the Wiki Discord, everything else that we're trying to do is all on there for free. And Trypod Punters Tips Forum for Jacob's Facebook group. And yeah, we'll catch you next week.